What's up, Brook family? This is Jeremy, and we're going to be studying the Word of God together. And whenever we approach any text, the first thing we want to ask is, what do we see? And we want to make some basic observations. Today, we're going to be looking at Acts chapter 16, verses 25 through 34. And these videos are to aid us in our DNA groups. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. First, we see Paul and Silas, who were missionaries in the first century. They're in prison. And what they're doing in prison as they suffer is they're praying and singing hymns to God. So they're involved in worship. That's my first observation. And secondly, we see that the prisoners were listening to them. So they were worshiping and they were being a witness. Next, what we see in this text is that God delivers them through an earthquake. Okay? And the doors were opened and everyone's bonds were unfastened. So God's deliverance was miraculous, which tells us something of how he delivers us from suffering here on earth when he chooses to. In verse 27 through verse 29, what we see is a response to God's power from the jailer. That's the one who was supposed to be guarding them. It says that he was about to kill himself. So that tells us that his response to God's power was one of desperation. Okay. And then he was struck with fear. He came up to Paul and Silas, falling down in fear, it says. So I'm just going to note that his response was of the fear of God. And he asked the question, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Whenever you look at a narrative in the Bible, you want to pay attention to the quotation marks. They usually show us the central idea of the text, usually. So he had a desire for salvation. Okay? And finally, verse 31 to 34, I would say, really carries the thrust of this text, which is salvation. Okay? And what you'll see is the word believe repeated twice. You always want to pay attention to repetition. Okay, so I would say that salvation involves believing. And then it says that that's Paul and Silas, they spoke the word of the Lord to him and all who were in his house, or to all who were in his house. So it involves preaching. Someone saying or preaching the word of God. And then we see that they were baptized. Now that was a response to their faith. Okay? Write that down. And finally, I want to read verse 34. It says, "Then he brought them up into his house," that's the jailer, "and set food before them, and he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God." So here you see the joy of a new family. Excuse my chicken scratch. Okay? And you'll also see that the word household, or him in his house, is repeated often. So there you have it, Brook family. Always ask, what do you see in this text? Now, I want to encourage you with your own observations or with these observations to ask, how does this relate to the death and resurrection of Jesus?